Hi everyone, welcome to my talk. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Adam Rowe and I will be answering one of the most pressing questions of our time today. Can undergrads build an IDP? So first, a little bit about myself. I'm a professor at Code University of Applied Sciences in Berlin. More about the university later. Formerly, I was a CTO. I was a physicist at CERN for a while. So I've had a bit of a varied background and I bring that all together at my current work. I'll explain more later. Right now, I'm responsible for a lot of topics around cloud computing, around CI/CD, software operations, etc. So platform engineering sort of falls in somewhere in there, of course. Please reach out anytime. You can find me at some of the usual places. So a little bit about this university. It is a relatively small kind of boutique private university of applied sciences. It is very tech-oriented. The students study software engineering or product management or design. And we've been around for about 8 years now. So the key really is also that we have a project-based learning model, and that's really essential to how this has worked out. What does that mean? Well, the way that I interpret it is it means that we try to put the student at the center. There aren't many classes, but there are some. And ideally, especially our engineering graduates, can leave university and see at least quite a bit of their time as almost work experience. Many of our students can get hired at a bit of a higher grade than undergraduates usually can. So what does this look like in practice? So ideally, it's a 6-semester study plan. The first year is much more structured than the later years. In the first semester is quite interdisciplinary. The second semester, the students studying software engineering can really learn about what we call the foundations of software engineering. So we're talking here, a lot of this is about programming, web development, but also some math and other things. That's pretty important for the structure of what we're going to build up today. Later on, students have a lot more freedom as well, which is very important. So what does this look like in the second semester? One of the classes that students take is essentially web development. So we focus really on how to do it. And here we really try to strike a balance between saying we're going to do the state-of-the-art, fanciest, most modern way that is most aligned with industry, and also dig a little bit deeper, have students really understand a little bit more of what's going on here. What does each component and language do, client-server relationships, etc. This is a bit of what the curriculum looks like. Most of the examples use an Express and Mongo stack, though sometimes we're working with Python and Postgres too, just to keep our students on their toes. So after that, though, students have a lot of freedom. This is what I call the building stuff, learning stuff part. So yes, there are guardrails, and a lot of that is set up to make sure that students really do learn a lot. But students are pretty free at our little university to study, or I should say to learn however they want. They can do internships, they can work on projects, they can even come to class sometimes. And a lot of the work that I do means I work with independent students and groups to kind of help them figure out how to learn what they want to learn best. So what does that look like? Yeah, like I said, building stuff, learning stuff. It looks a little bit like the marketing from other universities these days, but it also looks a little bit like working. In a sense, I could say that in our later years, you could imagine that our students sort of interact with our curriculum almost as an interface more than a class, if I can. And what I mean by that is that we try not to tell students how to learn, how to do something, but rather allow them to sort of find their way through and develop competencies and then show us that they've done that. And then sometimes a project like the one I'm going to walk you through today comes up as a way to learn, where we offer that to students and say, hey, if you want to learn this thing, here's a way to do it. So that got me thinking, can advanced students build an internal developer platform for the beginner students? And the answer is, of course, we can try. So what this looks like in terms of the sort of structure of our curriculum is that the more advanced learners, let's say students in their last year, build something targeting really those second semester students, because that's where we have a bit more of a fixed curriculum where we sort of know what students are going to be building and with what technologies. So in terms of the academic side of it, basically, the idea is that I'm going to get some advanced students and have them act as a platform team for the beginners. These are the learning objectives for reference. So we start, of course, where we should always start, which is figuring out the problem. Luckily, we're all in the same building. We're all on the same floor of a building in Berlin. So I had my advanced students go out and interview the beginning students to figure it out a bit. And so what it really came down to is that they were not focusing on deployment. They found full clouds too confusing. They learn a bit about it in class, but that's not really the main learning objective because they're also still trying to figure out what a client-server relationship even is. Most of the examples use Express and Mongo, which is also what most of the students choose to use at the end of the semester for their projects, but they are free to do whatever they want. In general, though, they do have a server-side rendered application, not doing something fancy like with React just yet at this stage of the studies. And usually the students have a single repository with a simple website setup, an external database, and everything sitting in one place on GitHub. So this gives us sort of a pretty natural way to have a golden path for deploying and serving a single Express service per repository. It's a pretty obvious way forward here. So this is a good start for a platform engineering approach, I would say. So fast forward a bit to the end of the semester. What did my students build? So what did the advanced students build for the beginners? And the answer is they built their own Backstage, and they really were able to build, let's say, an MVP, at least a proof of concept, but it went beyond that, of a system. And so what you can see here is something that essentially would be facing the beginner students, where we say, give us your public GitHub repository and tell us your email address with our internal domain, and we will deploy it for you. Of course, there are some guardrails around there, around security, but also it does here have to be Express. In the end, we built in Flask as well, and we could auto-detect that pretty easily, of course. But this is sort of what it looks like. And yeah, we got it to work. The architecture, I would say, for an internal developer platform is relatively straightforward. For a group of undergraduate students, it is relatively complex. But it was quite interesting also to work with these more advanced students and have them reason through some of these tools at the infrastructure level. So how did we do it? Basically, the work looks like work in a team on a company. We had a once-a-week synchronous in-person meeting at the whiteboard. We had lots of snacks on the table. If I brought my dog, the students even showed up. And other than that, the work was async. That meant Slack, a lot on GitHub, etc. Essentially, like I said, the goal is to get people as experienced with a real work environment as possible during their undergraduate studies. And I think this really mimicked that experience pretty well, at least the startup style. So, of course, there were some challenges on the way. One thing is that we started this in February 2024, more than a year ago, and there were very, very few resources on IDPs at the time. There were no online courses. The O'Reilly book and others hadn't been published yet, etc. So it was actually, I would say it was a little too early to pull this into an undergrad curriculum. Also didn't help that I hadn't done this before because I'm a dusty old professor who's been out of industry since 2018. So of course there was this ulterior motive. I wanted to learn about this, but I think it would have helped if I had a little more resources available. So, I mean, one of the things that meant was that students would ask me questions that I couldn't answer. And again, how would we do that in the real world? Well, I sent them out. So at least one student joined the platform engineering Slack and was going back and forth with someone who I believe was a maintainer on Backstage. So again, great experience from a learning perspective in terms of real world, also pretty challenging for undergrads, right? The platform team itself had some more junior members, some more senior. One had just grasped the client-server relationship properly. Another had recently done a technical internship at Google. So possibly mimicking real-world experiences, but even more extreme, I would say, in a sense, was the heterogeneity of the team, the knowledge that they brought in. And of course, most team members had to learn a lot about cloud and Kubernetes and containers on the way. Many had touched it before, but not really worked with it at the steep level. The other thing that I should mention, I wouldn't even say a challenge, but is worth noting, is that we talk a lot about culture when we talk about platform engineering, and I intentionally left that out and really scoped this to focus on the technical element. So perhaps not a challenge, but a limitation, let's say. So in the end, the question was, can undergrads build an IDP? And I would say, in this learning environment, yes, absolutely. This is the team looking happy. We did a semester retro at the end, our little like I wish I wonder, and there's me on the side. So all in all, what I would say is this is absolutely possible. From a pedagogic point of view, I would say maybe I was a little too early. I think doing this again now would be a lot easier than it was more than a year ago. But I think I do have these conditions with advanced students who are trying to get their hands dirty, get out into the real world, and a setup where beginners have something that can easily be translated into a golden path. The project lives on. After this team moved on from this, one student has taken it for their final semester to really upgrade, maintain, optimize quite a bit. So the project is still around, and hopefully we can even get it to a stage that those first semester students, second semester students, don't just test it for us, but actually can use it as a part of their deployment process. Thank you so much for coming, and like I said, please reach out anytime. Take care.